Hello everybody, my name is Juan Francisco González Ruiz and this is my project about what a language as a system is. First of all, I will talk about language. Since human beings appeared on earth, we have tried to communicate for many reasons. At the beginning, human beings used pictograms in caves in order to communicate and survive. After that, they tried to use sounds, and that sounds acquired meanings. Many years after, the spoken language showed up. As Ferdinand de Saussure said, language is a social product. I have always said that this is a kind of gift that life gives us. However, language is so complex. If we analyze it, language is made up by sound and meaning mixed in words. Properties of language. Language has some characteristics. Here we can see some of them. Displacement. It refers about situation related to the past or future. So they are not existing in this very minute. It's the same with places which they are far away. Arbitrariness. This characteristic is about the strange relation between meanings, sounds, and its graphic representation. Productivity. It's the creativity for producing language. I mean more vocabulary. Cultural transmission. Another property of language is that it can be transmitted generation by generation. Discreteness. The importance of each sound is terrific because one sound can change completely the meaning of a word. For example, when we say pack or back. Duality. It refers when we combine sounds. We have other properties of language. For example, vocal auditory channel, which is related to the vocal organs which we use to produce sounds. Or reciprocity, when we say that someone can be issuer or receiver. Here we will see some of the most famous linguistics and their theories. Piaget. He points out the qualitative difference between adult thinking and child thinking. There's a relationship between cognitive capacity and intelligence with the social environment. Also, he defines the concept of assimilation and accommodation. Chomsky. He defines the difference between competence and performance. Competence means the acquisition and knowledge about a language, and performance, the production of that knowledge. He says that children can produce language because they've got language acquisition advice. Krashen. He said that we get the acquisition of a second language by two ways. Acquisition, which means that we get subconsciously the language. The other way for getting a language happens in a conscious way. That is what he called learning. Vygotsky. He said about the importance of the context in learning a language. The social context affects learning more than attitudes and beliefs. Context is part of the developing of the children's mind. It affects the cognitive process. Now, it's time for talking about grammar. Grammar is a science which studies language. Besides, this science is made up by other parts: morphology, phonology, phonetics, syntax, semantics, and lexicology. We're gonna start with phonology. Phonology studies phonemes, and phonemes are acoustic images which are units of the language. These sounds need a written representation, and that is a grapheme. An example, we have the phoneme A and Its grapheme is this. On the other hand, we have other branch of grammar, phonetics. Phonetics studies where and how we produce the sounds. Next, we're gonna see phonetics chart. Basically, the phonemes are divided in three groups. What you see are symbols or characters, which represent phonemes, and phonemes are sounds. Up to your left, you can see vowel sounds, and they are 12 sounds. Up to your right, they are diphthongs. I mean two vowel sounds together in one syllable. Finally, you see below consonant sounds, and they are 24 consonants. In the phonetic alphabet, we can see four columns. The first one is the phoneme, the sound. The second column is the place of articulation, the place inside the mouth where the sounds happen. The third column is the manner. It means how we produce the sound. In other words, the air passage inside the mouth. Stops means that the air is suddenly interrupted and then it gets out the mouth. Fricatives happen when the air brushes to get out. In a fricative, we have first stops and then fricative manner. Nasal sounds go out through the nasal cavity. Finally, in the fourth column, you can see voiced, which means that there's a vibration, and voiceless sound, which means that there's no vibration. Now, it's time to talk about morphology. Morphology is another part of grammar. It's a science which studies the grammatical form of the words. Let's see a concept mapped about the formation of the words. One important point about morphology is the word formation. This is divided in segmentation, which is about dividing the words in morphemes. Reduction is when we use contraction, as do not and don't. When we create a new word putting together two or more words, that is compounding. And when we use compounding in verbs, nouns, adverbs, and adjectives. We use clipping when we reduce a word in shorter forms, as doctor to dog. Blending is a combination of two words when we use affixes and suffixes, that is affixation. Now, affixation is divided in derivational and inflectional. Derivational uses prefixes and suffixes, and the meaning of the word change. Inflectional uses just suffixes, and the meaning of the word doesn't change. Finally, we use conversion when we use the same word in two different functions, like noun and verb. Now, let's talk about the last branch of grammar. When we say or write the words in a sequence and order, we are talking about syntax. Also, syntax is about the function of the words. For instance, we have subjects, which mean the topic we are talking about. We have verbs, I mean the actions. Modifiers, words that describe other words. Determiners, which modifies nouns. It's important to mention the different kinds of sentences. For example, we have simple sentences, which are made up by noun phrases and verb phrases. We have compound sentences. They consist of two sentences joined by a coordinated conjunction. And finally, we have complex sentences, which are made up by dependent sentence and independent sentence. Now, we're gonna see an example of morphology 3. Okay, here I will show you an example of morphology tree. I have a sentence, the baby hits the ball. So, in the first part, we have the article. We have baby, baby it's a noun. We have hits, it's a verb. The, another article, and the noun, ball. So I join these two parts, article plus noun, and I form noun phrase. It's the same like this. I join article and noun in order to make a noun phrase. But this part, as you see, is the subject. After this line to this part is the verb phrase, like you see here. So finally, I join these two parts of the sentence in order to make a simple sentence. So this is a very basic example of morphology tree. Thank you.